I'll tell you straight up, guys, I'm apologizing in advance for any outside noise. No matter what we've done, we've postponed, we've started, we've stopped. Where we're at today, we're just going to have a little bit of noise here and there, and I apologize in advance for it. Hey, I'm Matt, and you can call me Coach. Thanks for joining this week's episode. This week, we are talking about a compromise in a potential landscape project that you might be doing. You know, here on the channel, I am a huge proponent of DIY landscape projects. I really am. You know that if you've watched or listened to me for any length of time. Well, there are compromises too. I know that there are some folks out there that will rarely, if ever, pick up a shovel. And then there are some that are total DIYers, and then the compromise comes. And that's what we're talking about here today. In cases of taking on a landscape project, you have a couple of options, don't you? Number one, and the least expensive, absolutely free landscape project makeover is when you do nothing at all. You're never going to save more money than never doing anything, am I right? The other option is going out and hiring a professional like me. Now that is a full retail, full boat type of an expense, and some of you may have the resources to do that. Then there are some of you who are going to do it all themselves and save a whole lot. And then there's option number four. Option number four is being your own contractor and hand-picking maybe a few of the elements of a new landscape that you can do yourself. And that's what we're discussing here today. Hey, I'm Matt, and you can call me Coach, and every Friday I bring with you landscape DIY education, landscape design theories and concepts in a very hopefully easy to understand format so you can tackle landscape projects yourself, get professional results that you want, save a boatload of money in the process, and be a hell of a lot more self-reliant in this day and age. You know, after the past 20 plus years as a self-employed landscape designer and contractor, retail nursery manager, college educated in ornamental hort, and an educator in horticulture, I think I bring with me a lot of education and experience that I want to share with you, the new modern self-reliant homeowner of today. Okay, so one of the things that I thought about when I was putting together this episode was maybe there's a compromise for some folks out there. They want to do something, but maybe they don't have the resources and funds right now to hire the whole thing out, and they're really kind of DIYers. You know, they know how to plant a plant, or maybe they know how to do electrical, or maybe they're great carpenters, but they don't know their ass from a hole in the ground as far as what plants would look good. So here we're going to talk about being your own general contractor, or in this case, landscape contractor, on a project of your own. This is a compromise. It's not as cheap as DIY, and it's less expensive than hiring a professional. Are you ready to go down this road, go down this rabbit hole? Because here we go. Okay, so when we're talking about being your own contractor, you are going to take over the responsibility of the home improvement project that you're considering. Now, we're talking about landscaping, but you could also apply it to something inside, like redoing the kitchen or adding on an additional bedroom and bathroom. But as a homeowner, you have the right to improve your own property, hire contractors or subcontractors in this case, to do those things, provided that you follow guidelines, rules, and policies of the area and the county or city that you live in. Now, when it comes to a landscape project, you guys are going to be taking on the administrative role that I used to take on. So you're going to be deciding up front what portion of that project are you going to do. Maybe you're going to do all the demolition. There's a lot of money to be saved by doing any demolition. A lot of people can take stuff out. It's the hard part of putting it back together. So you can do that. So you're also going to be lining up any permits that might be needed. Say, for instance, you're doing a new patio and a new patio cover and lighting and maybe an outdoor kitchen, and you're going to sub some of this out and some not. Well, probably that patio structure is going to need a permit if it's bigger than, say, 100 square feet, 10 by 10. You may need stuff if you're doing electrical, you may have to do a permit. And in order to do that, you may have to come up with something of a concise drawing that you have to submit to your county or city to get that permit. And then there's this, the cost of getting that permit. Some places are reasonable. California, where I came from, there was no reasonableness. It was horrifyingly expensive. But that was my job. Now it's going to be your job. So now we move on to, you've decided what part you're going to do or not going to do, and now you're going to go out and find a professional to do the portions that you have decided to sub out. So maybe you're going to do the demolition. Now you've got everything down to just dirt. Now maybe you're going to bring somebody in to do the site work, maybe some grading. You're going to do some underground work like drainage and irrigation. Maybe the flat work like all the new cement walkways and patio. That's up to you. You know, you'll be required to go out and make a phone call and get some subcontractors there and tell them what part of the project you want them to do. And be very specific. Very, very specific. You're never alluding to what other subcontractors are going to be there. You're not alluding to the fact that you're going to be doing the demolition. You're just telling them, hey, Joe, I want you to estimate how much it's going to cost to pour this patio, this length, this width, this depth, and this finish. Please give me an estimate for that. That's how specific you get. Now, if you want Joe to also do the structural, because maybe they can do that, then you can do that as well. Chemistry is going to be a very big thing when it comes to you being your own contractor and hiring these subs out. You'll also be responsible for gathering those estimates, making a decision, scheduling these people in a process of your project where they're going to fit. Say you're going to use them in the month of August, and you know your demolition part is going to be a 1-week process starting on the 1st of August and finishing on the 7th. Then you go to your site work. Well, make sure you don't schedule Joe for the flat work on August 8th because you won't be ready yet. You don't have any grading, you don't have any soil amending, you don't have any underground work, sleeving, nothing done. And all of a sudden Joe shows up on the 8th going, I'm ready to go. Well, I'm kind of behind. So you are going to want to have a spreadsheet or a whiteboard or just a good piece of binder paper, and you're going to want to schedule it out. And make sure there's a day or two, that are spaced between one phase of the project to the next. That's going to be key because just like a nice river, we want it to flow correctly when it comes to your project. We don't want it to go So you have to understand that general contractors or landscape contractors like I was, we make our money being the tip of the spear for you. We're the ones that come up with drawings. We're the ones that come up with designs that if permits are needed, we submit, we pay for, but really you pay for, those particular costs. Then we also delve into the project itself with our professional tools, and that's what you're paying for. Well, here you're removing that element and becoming that element. And that's where the savings are going to come in if you're a smart shopper. The other thing is, I think I just mentioned it a little bit, but your planning and due diligence is going to be key. Don't expect to wake up Saturday morning and go, I'm going to be my own contractor and I'm going to get a bunch of subcontractors and some estimates and I should be ready to go in a week. Nope, that's not going to happen. When you're talking about successful business people in your particular area, they may be days, weeks, months, and in some rare cases, even years out before they can even sniff your project. So this is where you're going to have to make some calls. And one of the very first thing you're going to do on the phone to save that contractor some time and you some time is, How far out are you right now? And it's just a real simple sentence. They will know what you're talking about. How far out are you right now? I'm 6 weeks out. I'm 6 months out. Okay, hey, thank you very much. I wanted to start a project in about 3 months, but if you're 6 and really busy, then see what they say. Hey, well, we might be able to squeeze you in. What kind of project you got going on? So be aware of a time frame. You may go through a few subcontractors before you find somebody that can actually come look at your project, give you an estimate in a reasonable period of time, or right then would be perfect, and then be able to start. So be aware of the timeline. Do not get impatient. This is not an impatient project. You want to be able to do it a couple, 3 months down the road minimum, okay? When doing the estimate thing, if you have found subcontractors that actually show up or actually return your phone call, then get your estimate and get a minimum of 2, I would suggest 3. Don't go getting 5 and 7. You're wasting everybody's time, and all you're doing is creating a analysis paralysis scenario that you're going to go into. You got 7 there. You're hardly going to remember the guy or gal that showed up for estimate number 1 and number 5. Which company was that? Yeah, I don't remember. What was the chemistry we had? So you're going to just protract that timeline out by getting a whole bunch of estimates. Everybody should be somewhat in the ballpark because costs and time are going to be relatively the same. If you get one that says $1,000 and one that says $8,000, okay, then you have a problem. You want some the middle of the road. You know, does the $1,000, did they really understand what you were asking? And the $8,000, they're going, did they understand what I wanted? You know, you really have to make that decision, but I always suggest looking at the middle of the road contractor where you have decent chemistry, okay? So being your own contractor, and if you have not signed up for our 15-step DIY landscape checklist, now would be the perfect time, because understanding that step-by-step process in a landscape project will help you tremendously in being your own contractor on your own landscape project. So check it out. Always below, there's the email. You can always request it. Also, check out the book too, Landscaping Simplified. You know, an easy weekend read for sure, and you can learn volumes of information on what you can do, what you're capable of doing, and what you might need help with. All right, let's talk about being your own contractor and the step-by-step process you're going to want to go through so that you have a nice, even flow to your project. Before you've even picked up the phone and called a single subcontractor, you're going to need something of a comprehensive landscape plan or design. Now that can be done by you with a little bit of education, like in the book, or you can hire that out as well. You may pay anything from, depending on the complication of what you want done, $200 to $1,500, depending on your project. Step number 2. As mentioned before, determine what you are going to complete and what you are going to have others complete. Step number 3, seek out those professionals and get the estimates that you want. Once you have the estimates in front of you, make a freaking decision. Don't sit there and pine back and forth for days or weeks, because their schedules are constantly evolving. So you want to make a decision, get on their schedule, and get them on your schedule. That's step number 4. Make sure you have put a timeline together. And in that timeline, you have put yourself in there as far as what you're going to be doing. Step number 5, create contracts, or most likely the subcontractors will have contracts that you're going to sign, and you're going to render or pay them a deposit for the portion of the project they are going to be responsible for. You're not giving them 50% up front. Okay, you're giving them probably $1,000 deposit or 10% of their portion of the project and nothing more. Now, if you feel comfortable throwing out 50% before they've even put a shovel in the ground or anything else, it's your business, but I certainly would not, and I never expected that from a client of mine either. Besides, in California, it was a freaking misdemeanor. It was illegal as hell. Okay, now, start dates and stop dates. Very important to the flow of the project. If you are part of the project, when are you starting and when are you finishing? Because the finished part of the project you're doing, you gotta be done before Bill shows up to do his part. So once you commit, do not stop, no matter what it takes. If you have to get family, friends, a handyman, whatever it takes, you have to finish your portion so your project flows. Once the project is going, supervise as needed. There are some portions and some elements of your project you're going to want to pay really close attention to. And it's those elements that are really hard to reverse. And when I say that, I mean things like a completed irrigation system and you haven't seen the performance of it or anything else yet. A completed drainage system and flat work. Man, you got to make sure that the flat work contractor that you hire, if it is not you, then you have to make sure the slope, the final dimensions, the finish, and everything is good. Did they put wire or rebar reinforcement in it as needed? Make sure that you have those elements completed to your satisfaction before those guys leave, and certainly before you've written that final check. And finally, step number 8, bring the project home. Who's finishing it off? Is that going to be you? I personally suggest, if you've never done this before, the demolition and the planting of plants is a great place for the DIY portion of this Be Your Own Contractor, because you can get help and you can seek out people at nurseries and that kind of stuff and really bring the project home in a nice, professional, finished element, such as mulching and sod if you have it, anything that goes in the ground, and then you're right on top of it there to make sure that it takes off correctly and you are control of the water and whatever else those plants may need. So maybe the beginning in demolition and finishing it up at the end. So for me, the best landscape projects I ever were involved in were the ones that just went right down from one phase to another seamlessly. And that's what I'm hoping for you. And don't expect it to be perfect the first time. If you expect perfection, your expectations are way too high. You may stub your toe. You may have a subcontractor that's going to stub your toe for you. And just understand that that is part of the process. For me, it took years and years and years to plan these things out so they went smoothly. Also developing relationships in the contracting community where I could rely on other subs on short notice if necessary, or for one to come bail my ass out of hot water because I made a mistake myself. Those things do happen, and you have to be patient, and you have to understand that kicking the dog and swearing at the kids isn't going to make it happen any easier or any faster. So let's take a hypothetical and see, in general statements, how much money you can save as a result of you being your own contractor. Okay, like I told you at the top of the show, if you do absolutely nothing, is going to be the cheapest landscape project you will ever undertake. And then you can just look at that get worse and worse and worse as time goes on. You know, the weeds are getting higher, the bushes are getting bigger, the look is getting uglier, and you haven't done a damn thing. So that is the cheapest way. But hypothetically, let's take a front yard makeover, and you have allocated $10,000 to this front yard makeover. Now, if you take this on yourself in a 100% DIY capacity, you could probably expect to pay on a $10,000, I would say $3,000 to $5,000 out of your pocket, as opposed to the next option. That's how much you're going to spend on a $10,000 project. Now, if you go out and do a full professional coming in and designing it up, ripping it out, and putting it all back in, it's going to cost you the full $10K without any problem at all. And like most clients that I always have, some people like to do what they call add-ons, and that's where the $10,000 turns into $12,000 or $13,000 because, oh, I want a fancier finish on the walkways, or I want more expensive lights, or I want bigger trees, and incrementally the price goes up. There you go on a full retail, hire it out to a contractor. Now, if you're doing it yourself, you can probably expect to pay somewhere between $6,500 to $8,000 if your own contractor. So you're saving probably 20 to 35%. And that is where the savings for being your own contractor, having your own headaches instead of that guy doing it for you, you're absorbing all the stress and frustrations of managing other people and other subcontractors and doing stuff yourself and dovetailing all these little elements together so it becomes smooth. This is where people like myself, it's where we made our money. It's where we made our living. We took that burden off of a client and put it on our shoulders. And in this case, you're doing it yourself. And that's where that 20 to 35% comes in. Don't hold me to those hard and fast numbers. Those are really a generality. You know, if you're working in the Bay Area of California, I don't think you'd be able to do a front yard project for $10,000 anymore. They're probably more like $20,000. And materials and labor are all regional. You know, look at the cost of lumber now. The same thing goes for plant material. Everything has increased in cost tremendously. So understand that 50 to 70% or that 20 to 35% may vary a little bit depending on where you're located. But one thing I wanted to convey in this episode was another alternative to doing it all yourself. I know full well there are some folks out there that will never pick up that shovel. They will never design a landscape design. It's just not in their wheelhouse. And I'm okay with that because those people right there is how I made a good living over the years. But one thing I wanted to do on this channel is I always want to keep you informed and give you options so that you can do something and not just nothing if your landscape is in certain dire need of a makeover. Right now, you've got a coach, a landscape coach that can offer you free advice up to a certain point without any cost to yourself. I think it's a pretty good resource, and I would really ask you to avail yourself to some of my knowledge if you're considering or in the middle of or had a question about a landscape makeover project. Now, one of the things that we're almost on the cusp of is we're doing our ebook Landscaping Simplified drawing on Saturday. If you haven't submitted your email to me, then you're going to be out of luck. But we're giving away 2 of them. And I think it's pretty good to celebrate our 1st year anniversary as we're steaming in to season number 2. Anyway, I'm Matt. You can call me Coach. I hope you got a little bit of something out of this. If there's still a lingering question, don't hesitate to email me or drop a comment down below and we'll answer them for you. Anyway, until next Friday, guys, thanks for tuning in. I look forward to seeing you next Friday. Don't forget to check out the podcast. And as always, don't forget to look at the website to see some of the educational products that we have. I'll see you next Friday. Thanks for tuning in.